And we are back. We are back after that little bit of a breakage.
Indeed.
We are back with our honourable guest here. And Madam.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so I guess if you're just joining us, obviously we're talking about the forthcoming closure of the community language service in Tower Hamlets, and why that's not going to be a good thing for the community. So I guess the question is that, so from what I gather that I've read and watched and that, the council or the government are suggesting that they're not going to fully dismantle the service, but that they're going to slowly phase out the funding so that the centre funds itself by fees and stuff, presumably. So I guess, is the service actually being closed, or why will that mean that it leads to the closure of the service?
So what they're doing is they're more or less outsourcing it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just explain how the service works. So the service isn't grant funded; it's called grant aided. So what happens is the actual local authority, in this case Tower Hamlets, has a group of trained teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So these teachers are actually trained to actually teach languages. So they have that experience, etc. So you have a pool of teachers.
So it's a full-time job. It's not like a volunteer role.
Yeah. And then those teachers are sent out. So if, say, I, as a Tenants Residents Association,
Mm-hmm.
would do a survey and a lot of the residents want to learn a language, I could call up the council and go, look, we've got a demand here, can you provide us a teacher to actually run classes? So instead of doing that, what they're saying is we're going to dismantle that,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to provide a single pot of money,
Mm-hmm.
a one-off payment, so it's not continuous, to local organisations if they want to run those classes.
Yeah.
But that's it, it's a one-off payment, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So in effect, you more or less dismantle the service because those teachers are going to get fired.
And I
So
assume
you lose that pool of experienced teachers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're providing one-off funding to organisations that don't have that capacity to actually. So if you can imagine, so like there's a lot of management that's needed in terms of training, administering those staff. A small organisation won't have that. If you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, because I mean, I
Because
understand.
it's not just about someone in the classroom teaching. There's a whole management.
Because they do
structure
exams and stuff as well, don't they?
Exactly.
People achieve qualifications.
And you have economies of scale as well when it's run centrally.
The structure of that is how many people, you say that there's the backing and the management behind all of these things, but how much I mean, what's at stake here? I mean, how many people are going to be literally out of a job?
I think you're looking at, say, at least over 60 staff members.
Right.
So if you can imagine, these are highly skilled staff that they're part-time kind of. So you're looking at 60 highly skilled language teachers, unemployed.
And how many children?
You're looking at least over 1,400 children that are going to be affected.
That's a lot of children.
So that is a lot of children. So imagine, that is a lot. That's equivalent of a secondary school, I think. Being closed down.
And is this an after school event?
So some of them are after school, but most of them are weekends.
Okay.
So the classes run in the weekends.
So these children go like of their own accord. They want to learn these languages.
I think the parents. So the age group is quite young. So the parents basically sign up to it. And it's different language. You've got Chinese, Mandarin. You've got Lithuanian. You've got Russian. You've got Spanish. So it's a way of not just children learning languages, but people coming together.
Well, it's a very communal.
So I know someone who sends their daughter to the Spanish classes, but it's a good way of meeting other Spanish-speaking families, and that you basically could do other activities. I know the Mandarin classes, they have the language classes, but they do all these other activities as well
around it,
and it's a way of them preserving that historic Chinese community that we've had in Tower Hamlets, throughout the ages. Starting in Limehouse.
It's it's interesting because it opens up. I think people forget how many opportunities having languages opens up to you as well. I mean, like, I know personally, for going into like the graduate jobs market, a load of the jobs that I've always been looking at suddenly want you to be able to do that job but also have a fluency in, say, French or Spanish or German or Mandarin, because obviously it gives you opportunities to live in, you know, if you learn Spanish, I mean, you've got the whole of South America.
Latin America,
yeah, exactly, and you've got so many more opportunities. And it's about communication and accessibility.
I think that there's a paradox because we live in a post-Brexit Britain, which basically means that we're going to start trading with the rest of the world. If you don't know you can't expect everyone to speak English. You know, you need to go and understand the languages, and that's if we are going to basically open our doors to the world and trade with the world, then we need to
make sure we're
learning the language that's spoken out there.
Yeah.
You know, we can't be arrogant and expect everyone to speak English. And
sure.
And that's what it is. So it's like we are sort of like cutting our nose to save our face, if you know what I mean.
I've got to play devil's advocate here.
Away.
Why the CLS and not putting that money literally somewhere else, somewhere where it's really needed? For example, getting some of these youngsters off the street. They're living rough. Why not put it there? I mean, I understand. I totally understand. Remember, I'm on the fence on this one.
Cool.
No, don't attack me.
Yeah.
Okay, right. But I mean, you're looking at over 1,000 kids in what this is bringing in, right? There's a certain amount.
250 grand, which is equivalent of someone's wages,
Right.
A single senior officer.
Yeah, I was going to say as somebody's.
Yeah.
Okay. But
or a head teacher of a school.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then, I mean, sometimes on the way back home, I see some horrendous sights with kids, and they are kids, they're children to me anyway, but they're half drunk or drugged up. Why isn't money going there? Why isn't it? Well, I mean, language obviously is an important thing, obviously, but then there's a responsibility of the parent, the school during the day that they're going to, because obviously they're not going just to, a Lithuanian school. They're going to, I should imagine, a state-run or an English what's the word?
Infrastructure?
Yeah, like the
institution.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's the one.
You got all classy on me there. And they're going there, and so therefore there is a certain amount of education within the English language. Mum and dad at home will be talking and chatting and conversing and all the rest of it in probably their own language. So why are we paying all of this money? Why should we not be cutting here and there, and especially where some things are not apparent to me, a life or death, or in a situation where youngsters can be exposed to drugs, exposed to prostitution, and exposed to the elements even now. Can you explain that to me?
It's not either or. I just want to explain all the ills that you've explained, like antisocial behaviour, drugs, drinking, etc.
Yeah,
they're a product of poverty, and so it's sort of like goes against perceived thinking. People make bad decisions because they're poor.
Would this be one?
People make bad. So,
but would this be one? I'm sorry to but would this be one ploughing and trying to keep this institution open?
So we're intervening in terms of child poverty. Right. So what it is imagine if those 1,500 kids didn't get those services, then their life outcomes are going to be much worse.
Right.
So a certain percentage would be doing all those antisocial behaviours that you're going to do. So I'm not saying that community language service is the be all and end all of tackling child poverty. One of the aspects of tackling child poverty is through culture. So through these intangible things that you can't measure. Like arts, culture. These things actually help an individual. When we don't feed a child, or a child doesn't have physical activity, we can see the damage in the child.
Yeah.
But in terms of culture and those intangibles, we don't actually see that damage until they actually grow up. So one of the ways of actually tackling poverty is through culture. That's why we have libraries. That's what, etc.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
I think, going off that, right? So obviously, I guess you're talking about like nipping it in the bud.
Yeah,
Almost like, while
it's nipping in the bud. So the community language service is a tool, and I'm not saying so. That's why another way of tackling poverty in children is to provide music lessons. And the reason why we provide music lessons is, and I learned a musical instrument when I was a child as well. And one of the things you learn patterns. When you do music, you learn patterns, and that helps you in terms of mathematics and science as well. You actually seeing all these patterns, etc. So it's not just learning the instrument, but you're confident as well. You could do performance. You could go in front of an audience. So you have all these other benefits from it.
Yeah, you're
that
absolutely.
actually. So what I'm saying is you get more bang for your bucks.
Yeah.
In terms of tackling
Yeah,
child
you're never-
poverty
yeah,
through that.
I
So it's not
understand
just
that.
about bread. It's about roses as well. Bread and roses, if you know what I mean. That
Yeah.
famous song. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
very musical.
Yeah.
You're very, very musical. No, I understand. I mean, you're never alone.
Don't worry, I'm not
when
gonna
you
sing
music.
it. Don't
No,
worry.
please. You would have got our
Yeah.
last caller very, very happy if you had.
I think as well, I guess in terms of the long-term investment. So with the UK, we're famously not as a country, we're not very good at teaching languages in schools, right? In comparison to say like our European neighbours and that, and that's very apparent when I hang out with my German friends and So, but obviously, as there's such a growing demand for languages and stuff, I guess an argument could be made that learning these languages gets you past GCSE for things like A levels and for getting into top universities, Russell Group universities, all that sort of stuff. Like having these extra languages and skills like that is, I guess, a good a side skill, I suppose.
Yes,
I've-
absolutely.
A string to the bow.
I think what
Yeah.
it is all of us guys who actually gone to universities, when you do GCSEs, you just have to answer the right, give the right answer. But when you go to A levels or at a university level, you have to do much more thinking, reason, etc. And that's what these learning a language does. It actually, and one of the things in Tower Hamlets is that we have very good GCSE results, but when it goes to A levels, it drops. It drops, because you can't rote learn A levels where you can rote learn GCSEs, if you know what I mean. And so that's why those additional props are important, Gary. You're learning a language or learning extracurricular.
Yeah.
And you're talking about children in inner city areas. How else can you do? You can't go to some green field. So I grew up in a market town. I could just walk half an hour down and I'm in the countryside, and I could chill and do stuff. We don't have that in inner city London. So
Parks,
we have
but not roaming fields and stuff like that.
Exactly. You can't go out fishing or anything like that. So you have to provide those extracurricular activities to actually stimulate someone, and it's a way of tackling poverty.
Excellent.
And so I work in the courts, and I've seen people who hauled up.
Right.
A lot of them don't have that confidence. A lot of people commit crimes, etc. They don't have confidence. They're confused. etc. And by providing those extracurricular activities like learning a language or other cultural elements, you're actually providing that confidence to someone to actually make those right decisions.
What happens now? What happens now? If this goes through, if it's closed, if it's abolished, what's the next step? What happens?
I think the next step is that we need to have a proper thinking about what kind of society we want in Tower Hamlets, in East London and wider. For me, it's about what kind of civilizational values do we want. Do we want to become little Englanders? Expect everyone to speak English, look the same and act the same, or do we welcome diversity, multicultural and cosmopolitanism? If you know what I mean. And these are like this is not like a 21st century Tower Hamlets thing.
No.
These are like really old civilizational values that have been it's a hallmark of a civilized society.
Has it
How
been-
we
It's
treat
how
people,
metropolitan and-
how
yeah,
we treat
yeah.
people who are different than us.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it, instead, you know, I'd rather have a society built around hospitality than have a society built around hostile environment.
I was
you know,
gonna ask
and,
you your
and,
view
and,
on
and
that.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's, for me, it's a basic building block of what is this society about. How do we create a fair society? Is it we treat people like crap who look or sound different,
Yeah.
or do we welcome them and learn from them?
Well, just picking up on, obviously you talked about Tower Hamlets as an actual, you know, like as a, I don't want to say constituency, as a
It's-
place
yeah,
in
yeah.
itself,
As a place
as
in
a
itself.
borough.
It's the old
sorry,
East End, yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah.
So apparently in 2011 you had 90 different languages recorded in Tower Hamlets, which is, I mean, incredibly diverse. I mean,
That is.
where I come from, I don't think we'd find 90 languages
No.
going
True.
on.
I think it's historically the East End of London has been a melting pot. So historically, you had the old docks where people basically it was the first
Well,
point
it's
that
like
Arriving.
whopping and all
Yeah.
that, it's like
Right.
trading.
Arriving.
Yeah, and so my father came here in 1951, and he came off a ship. You know, they
Yeah,
didn't have airplanes then, and he came off and he stayed in East London for a year before he went to Sheffield to work in the steel mills, and then eventually end up in Bedford in the brickyards. But the East End has that traditional. That's where people arrive. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
That's how we get along with each other. You know,
Everyone's
and
kinda
we
in the
learn
same
from each other,
boat.
and then people hold themselves up and move on.
Would you-
And everybody adds something to it. So
Would-
you could look at the architecture, the road names, etc., and you
Councillor,
see
would you
different
s-
communities have come and deposited something for us to actually for other communities to come.
Would you
and
call
benefit from
yourself
it.
an East Ender then?
My father was an East Ender.
Would you say in your heart you're an
I'm
East
an
Ender?
East Ender in the heart. I just want to say I grew up in Bedford, near Luton.
Right.
Well, Luton is more or less East London, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I came here as a student and ever since stayed here. Yeah, so you could say I'm a.
So you're a little
Yeah.
bit. You've got a
Yeah.
little bit of a
Yeah.
twinkle in your eye
Yeah.
for the East End.
You've kind of adopted it as
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Let's have a little bit of a break. then.
Yeah, sure, break and then we'll
Yeah.
be back for some
We're
more.
just going to get some pie and mash.
Yeah.
Now, don't tempt me, I'm hungry.